You know, Sabbath, again, this word means to cease or to rest, to stop. And it comes from the very heart of God. It unfolds in the very first pages of the Bible. In the creation story, God creates everything that we see over 6 days, and on the seventh day, rest. Look at this verse together with me, Genesis 2, 1 through 3. It says, "So the creation of the heavens and earth and everything in them was completed. And on the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, so he rested from all of his work. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, or set it apart, because it was the day when he rested from all the work of his creation." And this is really important because God is establishing a rhythm for his people. I used to think, God rests because he's tired. The universe is a big thing, so he's overwhelmed. But God is never tired. In this moment, God is not tired. He's teaching. He's reminding his creation, his people, that there's a rhythm to life. There is work, and there is rest. It's kind of upside down, but God says, unless you do this, you will not fulfill the life and dreams that I have for you. In fact, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but God creates his prized creation, man and woman, on the sixth day, and then their first day of existence is a day of rest. Their very first day alive is a day that they just get to enjoy being with God. And I'm a doer, I'm a striver, I want to get things done. God has just given them the charge to go out and fill the earth and subdue it, pursue your dreams. And then the first thing he does is say, all right, everybody take a break. That seems so counterintuitive, but God knows that as his people, we don't work and then rest. We rest and then work from that. In fact, the way that the scripture describes God's creation, when he begins to say, hey, on the first day, and then the second day, and on the third day, it says, and then there was evening, and then there was morning. Evening and morning, which is completely opposite of how we think about our day. Our day starts at 5:30 when the alarm clock goes off, early morning, go work all day, and then you have evening. But the scripture describes that the day begins in the evening, connecting with family and what is most important, and resting, and then the day begins. And then this idea of Sabbath carries over into Exodus chapter 20, when God has redeemed his people, brought them out of Egypt. Remember, they had been slaves for 400 years. You were a slave, your granddad, your great-granddad, your great-great-granddad, everybody as far back as you can remember have been slaves. And then he gives them in Exodus chapter 20, this new people, a guideline, a framework for living, the 10 Commandments. So keeping the Sabbath makes the top 10. In fact, it's number 4. It goes on to say this in Exodus chapter 20, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy or setting it apart. You have 6 days each week to do your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord. Number 4 on the list, coming before adultery, stealing, murder. He says this is really, really important, because if you don't do this type of rhythm and rest, you are more likely to fall into the sins that come after. Like if we don't have margin and rhythm in our life, we're more susceptible to opening ourselves up to things like adultery and killing other people because we're so tired. He says this is really, really important to create a rhythm and establish in your life. This is a gift. Here's what I want you to think about with Sabbath, is that he's speaking to a group of people who have been slaves their entire existence, as far back as they can remember. And what do slaves not get? Slaves do not get a day off. Right? They don't get those gifts from their master. And so God says, look, you've worked so tirelessly, and work is really, really important, but I'm going to give you this gift to be able to stop and rest and remember. And I don't know about you, like I'm a striver. I feel like I'm constantly on the treadmill of doing things and wondering if I stop, what would happen. My wife and I got to get away this week for like 3 days up into the mountains after a very busy summer season. And again, we don't think we realized how tired we were, but we had such a great time busy doing absolutely nothing, which was so good. And then you remember why you love each other. Remember why you got married. And it's not about your kids or your schedule or this or that, but we really enjoy each other. But then coming back when you go on vacation, you come back to all of the things that are waiting on you. Like the inbox is full. This is just a little screenshot of my phone on Friday, and I'm just looking there at the bottom. That's my little to-do list things. And right there, just reminding me the notification. You have 7 things to do today. Not 6, not 8. You have 7 things, and you better get those things done. I don't know about you. I'm one of those guys who loves lists. I love checking things off. Have you ever written something on your list you've already done just to check it off? That's me. It's sick. It's a paranoid craziness. But and then by the way, you have a phone call you missed too. You might have to return that. Like that's our lives, right? There's always something pressing, calling for our attention. But Sabbath helps us, this moment to stop, rest, and remember. And it fights against these things in our life. It fights against the idol of busyness. And we worship busyness in our culture, right? We love to express how busy we are. When someone used to say, hey, how are you doing? We would say, I'm fine, I'm good. Now what do we say? We say, I'm really busy. And then we compete, right? When someone tells us about the busyness of their schedule, we say, oh yeah, let me tell you what I got going on. And then we just roll out our list of everything that we have going on. We worship busyness because we think somehow my worth is tied to my activity. It also fights against the idol of self-sufficiency, thinking that everything that I do is worth more than what God can do. Like, it's all up to me. It's dependent on me. If I don't get this done, it won't happen. Sabbath reminds us that we can stop, and God is still in control. The universe will still go about its existence. Now, Sabbath is a resting, a stopping, but it's not necessarily a vacation. I want you to remember this. Maybe write a couple of these things down. Sabbath is not time off, it's time up. It's a posture. It's not necessarily, hey, I'm just laying around the house all day. I'm doing absolutely nothing. But it's a posture of this, of confidence and trust in God. Of saying, I can pull back, I can push out distraction, I can do a handful of things so that my attention starts to be on God and His perspective instead of mine. A couple of things that we need to make sure that we're doing when we take Sabbath is one, is that we stop and remember Jesus' work. We stop our work so we can remember what Jesus has done. It's a big reminder of this central core of Christianity, is that it's not dependent upon my effort to get God's pleasure. It's about what God has already done for me through Christ. On a Sabbath, I stop and remember that my relationship with God is not depending upon me keeping all the moral checklists, but what Jesus has already done on my behalf. The second thing we need to be continually doing on Sabbath is connecting with Jesus and His people. Like, there's something about what Becky said about not isolating ourselves and gathering around with the people of God, encouraging each other, spurring one another on, reminding each other what's important. The third one is this, is that we make memories and we have fun. I don't know about you, there's a lot of parents in this room. I don't want my children to go into their adulthood and think, my parents were always just so busy, they didn't ever have time to breathe. Like, they were so overwhelmed by what they were doing that I don't remember, except for maybe a week in the summer where we actually had fun. We can create these moments of Sabbath around the dinner table. We can create these moments of weekly rhythms of Sabbath where we stop, and our children, parents, grow up with this idea that my parents took away, they took off from the stress and the overwhelming factors of life, and we created memories and we had fun together. And the fourth is this, it's just a big reminder, if we don't take a break, we will break. We can either voluntarily take Sabbath or involuntarily take it. We can either stop in our rhythm and say, God, I know I'm not in charge, I know I'm not in control, or our bodies will say, we're done. I'm going to lay you out. You're going to get sick. Our relationships begin to crater around us, and then we have to focus on the things that really matter because we didn't voluntarily do that before. It is a gift. But if we're not careful, there are a couple Sabbath killers. There's some things that will rob us, because I don't know anybody who doesn't think this is a good idea. I don't know anybody who goes, yeah, I wouldn't enjoy a day off. I wouldn't enjoy a time to stop and reflect and just quit all the demands of life and focus on God. That sounds like a good idea, but there's a couple of things that will kill that in our life if we're not careful. That's a good, yeah, that was awesome. It didn't come out right, but yeah. Number one is a poor work ethic. The Scripture has laid out a rhythm for us that we work really hard and then we take time off. Because I don't know about you, but if I don't get the work done that I necessarily need to do on the 6 days before, it always bleeds into the time off, and I can't relax and I can't cut it off and I can't just focus on God because I'm thinking about the to-do list. Another Sabbath killer is religious rules. A legalistic approach to a day like this, that it has to look exactly like this or it's not Sabbath. I think Sabbath is a gift for us, a moment to rest and stop and remember. In fact, Jesus said it like this, that Sabbath is for man, not man for Sabbath. That we don't jump through a bunch of hoops to get God's pleasure of how we're performing Sabbath, but just that we do it and it is a gift to us. Another big Sabbath killer for me is interruptions. And mainly around technology for me, like social media or my phone or email or just the next thing that's clamoring for my attention, that I need to push out some of that distraction so that I can focus on God. And then the last one, a big Sabbath killer for me, is not planning. Not just hoping it will happen, but that I have planned these moments to intentionally unplug from the world, from my busyness, from work, from the demands of life, so that I can place my attention on God. I want to close with this verse today, Matthew chapter 11. Look at it on the screen with me. This is Jesus speaking, and it's just such good, powerful words. In fact, this passage happens in a chapter that's discussing the Sabbath. The religious elite, they were really wondering why Jesus' disciples were behaving in a certain way. And he says, look, you're putting all of these restrictions on people so that they can't even enjoy this gift that God has given them. And he speaks these words, and they're so good. I'm big on the one-word Bible study method. If you're new to the Bible, just reading chunks of the Scripture and saying, okay, what does this mean? And just kind of chunking it out one little piece at a time. And look what it says. It says, come to me. We go to all different kinds of things. And Jesus says, look, stop going to those things and come to me. All you who are weary and burdened, all of you, not just select few of you, not just those of you who consider yourself religious, all of you, when you are weary and burdened, come to me. He says, and I will give you rest. I'll give you rest for your souls. And man, it would have been worth the price of admission to come to church today if you left and thought, man, I have rest in my soul. Some of us clamor so much for that kind of rest. And Jesus says, if you come to me, you will find that. He says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now, a yoke, obviously, Jesus is using a picture, an agricultural picture for that culture. And a yoke is placed on an oxen or a group of oxen, and that they would pull something that was heavy. And Jesus says, what I'm placing on you is the right kind of rhythm. It's the thing that you've been looking for, that the thing that I'm going to call you to pull. It's easy and it's light. It's gentle. I'm humble in heart. And I place this on you, and it leads to the right kind of rhythm in your life. So we have some men and women who are going to bring in the communion elements. If you guys would go ahead and get prepared for that. We're going to bring that in, and we're going to end our service with that today. But as they prepare that, I just want you to reflect and think about this verse today. This verse out of Matthew chapter 11. Come to me, all of you who are burdened and feel heavy today, and take my way, my rhythm upon you, my way of living, because it's easy and it's light, and it's how you were designed to live. You guys can begin to pass that out as you receive that. I couldn't think of a better way to end today's service of Sabbath and rest with, in a better way than receiving communion and remembering all that Jesus has done for us on our behalf. Because we think we strive and we strive and we strive and then we receive, but Jesus has given before we ever strive. So what we're going to do today is they pass this out. We're going to take a moment, and as you get the elements, that you would just stop and pray for a moment. And we're going to take both of those elements, the cup and the cracker there. They represent something. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So as they pass that out, I want you to take those elements, and I want you to read this verse. It'll be a fantastic verse for you to memorize, maybe place on a card, put on the dashboard of your car, on your mirror, just reminding myself when I'm heavy and when I'm burdened, when I've been running and running and running, that Jesus gives me this simple call to come to Him. So let's receive these elements and hold on to those, and we'll all take them together. Why don't we all stand to our feet as we close today? The night that Christ was betrayed before He was crucified, He was gathered with His closest friends. They were having dinner together, and He began to describe a new way to connect with God, a new covenant, a new promise of how God is bringing people to Himself. And He said, really, that will come through me, and will come through great sacrifice given for you. And He took the bread and He broke it, and He said, this is my body. Take and eat. Do this in remembrance of me. And then He took the cup. He said, this cup represents the blood of my covenant, a new covenant, mine poured out for you. He said, take and drink and do this in remembrance of me. So listen, I know it's a different kind of day. If it's your brand new first time with us, I hope that you'll come back. We'll have worship again next week. I hope it was helpful for you. I hope you go out of this place thinking, I need God's rhythm in my life. I need a moment to stop and rest and remember. I love you. I hope you have a great Labor Day. We'll see you next Sunday.
Your rule and reign in our hearts again. Increase in us, we pray.